The state has been at the forefront of passing laws to make life easier for the estimated 81,000 undocumented residents there, including giving them driver's licenses, free college, and health care. But this year, Republicans are pushing to roll back those benefits, and one of the leaders of the effort is a Fergus Falls senator.
What we heard loud and clear this last election, what we're hearing from our constituents, is that they want to ensure that taxpayer dollars are going to Minnesota families and not incentivizing illegal behavior and illegal immigration here in the state of Minnesota.
2025 is the first year Minnesota is providing undocumented workers with the state health insurance known as MinCare. Republicans at the state legislature say they want to end the program in large part because the cost to taxpayers is soaring.
The number one task for the legislature in the next few weeks is to produce a budget that puts Minnesotans first. Democrats' spending spree since 2023 has turned a nearly $18 billion surplus into a $6 billion deficit. Because of that overspending, we are now facing tough budget decisions. Budgets are about trade-offs and priorities. This year, Governor Walz has proposed more than $1 billion in cuts to nursing homes and services for families with disabilities. But he has stood by and continued to support taxpayer-funded health care for illegal immigrants. The cost estimate for free health care for illegal immigrants was $220 million in the February forecast. However, we have some new information that we're going to share today that shows that the costs will far exceed these initial estimates.
Republicans at a news conference this week said the numbers of undocumented residents signing up for state health care is way more than expected. So far, 17,000 undocumented residents have signed up. The original projection was 5,700, and the estimated costs will be more than $600 million over 4 years. That's according to Republicans. Now, that's way more than the original cost projection of $200 million. Republicans want to eliminate the program. Republican Senator Jordan Rasmusson was a guest on WCCO Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m.
We have seen the number of illegal immigrant enrollees triple what the Democrats estimated back when they were looking at the program starting. And so this is a program that unfortunately is incentivizing illegal immigrants to come here to Minnesota.
Minnesota approving progressive legislation is expensive and unsustainable. The state's health insurance program expanded to include illegal aliens at the beginning of this year.
Just over 3 months later, enrollments have spiked. More than 17,000 illegals have signed up to Minnesota Care, more than double the 7,800 projected.
Now, the cost could hit a staggering $600 million over 4 years, nearly triple what was expected. Joining us now, Minnesota State Senator Jordan Rasmusson. How do voters feel about this in the state? What are you hearing?
Minnesotans are recovering from a spending spree under Governor Tim Walz, where he took an $18 billion surplus and turned it into a $6 billion deficit in just 2 years. And one of the ways he did that was by taking tax dollars and funding free health care for illegal immigrants. And what I hear from Minnesotans is that they want us to put their family's budget first, not put illegal immigrants first.
Senator Rasmusson, I hope that Walz and his ilk, the lefties, understand that you can't take federal dollars to cover illegal aliens in your state Medicaid. I know they know that, but money is fungible. And just like in California, they've cooked up a little money laundering thing through a legal loophole where they funnel money into the state from the federal government, from federal taxpayers, to try and fill the hole that is created by all the illegals who are on the state Medicaid. So I hope that the feds come a-calling if they try and do that.
The sad thing here in Minnesota is that Governor Walz in his budget this year is proposing $1 billion in cuts to Minnesota nursing homes and for services for families with disabilities. But he is sticking by his taxpayer-funded health care for illegal immigrants and is refusing to cut a dime there. And so he's putting illegal immigrants ahead of seniors who need nursing home services and families with loved ones who have a disability. And that's wrong.
A battle is brewing tonight inside the state capitol over a newly expanded program providing taxpayer-funded health care to undocumented immigrants. Republicans say the costs have ballooned and there are other ways we should be spending taxpayer money. Joe McCoy checked in St. Paul as lawmakers try to rein in the budget.
With Minnesota projected to face a potential $6 billion deficit by 2029, lawmakers on both sides are proposing budget cuts. One of the most talked about cuts from state Republicans is a new portion of the Minnesota Care program.
Budgets are about choices and trade-offs.
Previously, the program provided state-funded health insurance to low-income residents, but in January it expanded to allow undocumented residents to enroll and receive the same benefits. In addition, Republican State Senator Jordan Rasmusson says could increase the budget deficit even more.
Republicans don't believe that we should be spending hundreds of millions of dollars on taxpayer-funded health care for illegal immigrants.
The Minnesota Department of Human Services projects the program will cost $200 million over 4 years. However, the state DHS says in the first quarter of this year, more than 17,000 undocumented immigrants enrolled in the program, when the estimation in this time frame was only 5,700.
Additional question, Mr. Chair, for the commissioner. And I'm not trying to get into a debate on this issue on the merits, but I just want to try to understand the governor's position a little bit. We have both in this budget bill, across the street in their budget bill, in the governor's plan, there are cuts to nursing homes. There's cuts to disability services providers. There's county cost share shifts. But one of the things that we haven't seen from the administration a willingness to cut is free health care for illegal immigrants. And one of the things that I look at is that that's a particularly expensive benefit for Minnesotans because we miss out on the federal match. And so for every dollar we're spending on that new program, which just started here in January 1 of this year, that's $2 that we could be using for nursing homes, for disability services, for some of these other priorities. And so I just wanted to, again, we don't have to get in the argument, I just wanted to understand why the governor is prioritizing spending money on free health care for illegal immigrants, but is okay cutting disability services, nursing homes, and increasing property taxes.
When we have the budget that we're looking at this year, there's a lot of tough choices to make, and we will continue to work with this committee as it moves forward, and to all the committees working on the governor's budget to make the best decisions for the state of Minnesota.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do appreciate the continued work with the team at the Department of Human Services to come up with different ideas, some of which are in this bill and some of which I hope are in a final product.
Okay.
But Mr. Chair, I kind of thought that was a little bit of a non-answer from the commissioner in terms of just the important priorities and trade-offs that we have to make. And the reason this matters is this falls within the Health and Human Services budget.
Huge.
And when we look at the gap that your bill is trying to fill and the gap that the other body's trying to fill and the gap the governor's trying to fill, there are trade-offs. And it doesn't mean that if we had unlimited money, we would like to do all these things, but I just wanted to ask about that key trade-off because it's big. If we look at the 4-year cost of it's about $220 million. So it's not a small thing. It's a meaningful public policy choice that impacts a lot of dollars and has an impact on the work this committee does too.
As we said, legislative leaders and the governor are probably behind closed doors right now in almost nonstop budget negotiations. So we have some able lieutenants. Senator Jordan Rasmusson from the Republican caucus and from the DFL caucus. Senator Scott Dibble. It's the hardest part of the budget, isn't it? Human Services.
We saw the Senate Democrats' Human Services bill today has more than $1 billion in cuts for Minnesota nursing homes and for services with families and disabilities. And so that is one of the consequences of the spending spree that we saw over the last 2 years in this $6 billion deficit. One of the ideas that Republicans have put forward to help solve some of these budget challenges is redirecting funding for taxpayer-funded health care for legal immigrants into these Medicaid programs where we get a federal match and we can actually address hundreds of millions of dollars of those cuts by reprioritizing those dollars.
Okay, quickly.
Okay, so I have to say Senator Rasmusson is not actually painting the picture that's accurate. The fact is it wasn't a spending spree. We put, $8 billion on the bottom line. In
into
2023,
reserves.
there was no spending spree. We spent
But the surplus
responsibly.
is gone, pretty much, right?
But it was a $12 million one-time $6 billion that we spent on things that people value. And this issue of immigrants.
This bill is about fiscal responsibility. It's about fairness, and it's about putting Minnesota families first. I'll first talk about the fiscal responsibility. This expansion of taxpayer-funded health care to illegal immigrants is clearly a failed experiment. It has only began in January 1 of this year. Enrollment started for illegal immigrants. Democrats told us that in the first year there would be 5,800 enrollees. By mid-April, we exceeded 20,000 illegal immigrants enrolled in this program. Well, the initial cost estimates from the Walz administration were $220 million. We know from looking at other states that this is going to cost taxpayers much more. And that, Mr. President, is why no other state does this in the country. The other two states that have tried this, California and Illinois, have liberal Democratic governors that are proposing rollbacks. Governor Newsom in California, after this program, a similar program, cost their taxpayers billions of dollars in cost overruns. Governor Pritzker of Illinois is proposing rollbacks to their program as well. And so, Mr. President, when this bill is signed into law, Minnesota will do what the vast majority of states do that are run by Democrats. This is not a radical proposal. What's radical is to leave this special session without fixing this failed experiment and this problem that will continue to grow our deficit and put a burden on Minnesota taxpayers. Mr. President, the savings from this bill are being absorbed in the Health and Human Services bill. And many of the dollars that are spent in our Health and Human Services bill are eligible for a one-to-one federal match, a one-to-one federal match. And so, by redirecting the savings to that bill, we are doubling the impact for Minnesota taxpayers. Mr. President, but this isn't just about numbers. It's also about fairness. I got a call from a constituent who's a small business owner who, him and his wife, work very long days running their small business. They're there from start to close, and they don't make a whole lot of money. They told me and shared with me that they themselves can't afford health care right now. And he asked me the question, why are my tax dollars going to incentivize illegal immigration, going to pay for a health care benefit that is more generous than what most Minnesotans can afford? And I couldn't give him a good answer, Mr. President. I also want to say very clearly that illegal immigration is not compassionate, and incentivizing it is wrong and leads to human suffering. In my hometown of Fergus Falls, we saw a trial and a conviction and a sentencing recently of human traffickers who were bringing an immigrant family into this country, and they left them to freeze and die. We have stories, not just in Minnesota, but across the country, of how illegal immigration leads to human suffering, and it's wrong to incentivize it. Mr. President, this bill, this proposal, is about priorities, and it's about putting Minnesotans first. And during this debate today, Minnesota Democrats made their priorities clear. 2 years ago, our state had an $18 billion surplus. Now we're facing a $6 billion deficit because of reckless spending. And Minnesota Democrats, during the regular session and during this special session, are proposing cuts to Minnesota nursing homes. They're proposing hundreds of millions of dollars in cuts to disability services for Minnesota families who have disabilities. They're increasing taxes on nursing home residents today. They're proposing cuts to special education. And Mr. President, we've seen that Minnesota Democrats are okay with that they're supportive of that. We've seen actions in this special session that will show that. But I didn't hear a single Minnesota Democrat stand up today and talk about putting Minnesotans first. The most vigorous defense that I've seen this year is on behalf of illegal immigrants. and having taxpayer-funded benefits go to them, while we are facing tough budget decisions that will lead to critical services for Minnesota families being cut. So, Mr. President, I would urge members to vote yes. This is fiscally responsible. This is about fairness. This is about putting Minnesotans first, and I would ask for your support. Thank you, Mr. President.